we are so happy to have Cliff Albright from Black Voters Matter. He, along with Latasha Brown, both are the co-founders of the organization. Black Voters Matter is dedicated to building power in Black communities throughout the South. And many people may know of their work because they were key to Doug Jones' Senate victory in Ruby Red, Alabama, back in 2017. And I am very pleased to turn this over to Cliff now.
Hi, thank you so much, Renee, and Eileen. You all have been such incredible supporters. Airlift has been incredible, and so just really, again, thank y'all for for this opportunity and the consistent support that you all have provided. I am Cliff Albright, co-founder of Black Voters Matter. How much time should I use, Renee, for introductory remarks?
Well, overall, you've got 15 minutes to speak. So Cliff, you can use it the way you'd like, and then we'd like 10 minutes for Q&A.
Okay, got you. So, yeah, I'm gonna go through these slides kind of quickly. And in fact, I'm probably gonna just go through our five basic core beliefs really quickly, so that I can just kind of leave more time, just kind of talk about like what we're doing now, right, in this moment that we're in 2020. And so just really quickly, we have 5 core beliefs. The first of those is that we believe in the power of local organizing and in building up for Black Voters Matter, that we really got to build up local infrastructure, local organizational infrastructure, electoral infrastructure. And so most of what we do is actually done through local partners, through community groups in cities and counties in each of the states that we're in, where we support those partners. We provide resources, we provide tools and technology, connectivity, sometimes helping to connect them to each other, sometimes connecting to neighboring states, national partners, sometimes connecting with funders and media partners. But again, the whole focus is really on those partnerships at the local level. And I'm actually pleased to that the 2 of the 3 groups that you just highlighted, that Eileen just highlighted, are actually groups that we've supported or worked with in one way or another, including LIT. Although Wisconsin is not one of our core states, you'll see on a couple of slides where I talk about there's some light touch states where we don't do the whole state and we don't do 15 or 20 counties, but we have like an anchor partnership or 2 in one particular city. And so Milwaukee is one of those kind of BVM light touch places. So I'm really glad to see those organizations were on your list. You go to the next slide. For Black Voters Matter, we say Black Voters Matter 365, which means that we do this work and we support organizations that do this work 365 days out of the year. It's not just about the general election or the 2 months before the general election. It's not even just about primary elections, but it's really about supporting these groups and the work that they do 365 days out of the year, including, and I'll talk about this in just a second, including election protection work, which has got to take place 365 days out of the year. The next slide, and the next core belief is that we believe that Black voters matter everywhere. And so we do work in states that a lot of people don't really view as being sexy states, right? We're in red states, we're in the South. When we drive around our bus, we drive around in what's the old Confederacy, right? And so, you know, we believe that we've got to matter and that we've got to compete and we've got to support this work everywhere. So that means even in states that aren't really thought of as major states or battleground states, but it also means that within those states that we've got to be in counties that aren't really thought about as being like really, really important counties. So, you know, as Renee mentioned in terms of the Alabama race with Doug Jones and Roy Moore, you couldn't win that race just by being in Birmingham and Montgomery and Mobile, right? You had to be in those rural counties, those Black Belt counties, those historic Black Belt counties, like Dallas County, where Selma is located, like Lowndes County, like Wilcox County. Ultimately, the county that brought in the last results that put Doug Jones over that night was rural Hale County in the Black Belt. And so you've got to be in all of those counties, because when you take the power of those rural counties, collectively, it's like the power of a major city, right? And so we saw that in that Alabama election, where the Black Belt counties combined had votes that equal what you would see in a Montgomery or in a Tuscaloosa or in a Huntsville. So for a variety of reasons, we say Black voters have to matter everywhere. Next slide. And we say that, you know, in order for Black voters to matter, that we have got to communicate and message in a particular kind of way, which first and foremost has got to be authentic, right? And so taking the first core belief that we got to have authentic messengers, but then you combine it with this one that says it's not enough just to have an authentic messenger, you've got to have an authentic message. Because there's nothing worse than when you give authentic, incredible messengers a message that is not authentic, right? And so going out and trying to tell folks that this candidate is the best thing since sliced bread when we know that he or she really isn't, right? And so part of what we do is we say, well, you know what? It's about us and it's about our issues. And as long as we ground the work in that, then we can always be honest and true and authentic with our communities that we're messaging to. It also means that we've got to have some honest and hard conversations around race, around concepts of power, right? And so when people hear that, they respond a certain kind of way because they know it's not your traditional talking points. And then the next slide and the last of the 5 core beliefs is that we believe that in order for Black voters to matter, that we've really got to invest in the leadership of Black women in a clear, intentional way. It's not just Black women as voters, right? There's been a lot written lately about, you know, Black women enrolled, that Black women as the percentage of as the backbone of the Democratic Party, right? But it's not just about Black women as voters, it's also about Black women's leadership. And again, going back to Alabama, when you look at the three of the kind of national regional groups that really invested in mobilizing Black voters, all 3 were either led by or co-led by a Black woman. So that's the last, but not by no means the least of our core beliefs. Where are we? So we're in 10 core states. Again, 8 of those are in the South, 2 in the North. They're listed right there on the screen. In the South, we're in Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina, and then 2 states in the North, Michigan and Pennsylvania. And then along with those 10 core states, and by core states, that means that's where we have, you know, our staff. We have at least 1 state coordinator. Sometimes we have an organizer. In a couple of states, we have more than 1 organizer. But for the most part, you know, we always have a staff member who coordinates and supports those partners that we deal with. And that can be anywhere from 15 to 25, in some cases 40 partners that we have within our states. And then I mentioned those light touch states where we don't have like core staff and we don't do a wide footprint of, you know, 20 counties, but, you know, we've got like 1 city or something. So like a Milwaukee, like a Louisville, where Latasha and I were just last month, and where we went with the Black Voters Matters bus. I'll talk about that in a second when we talk about voter suppression. You can go to the next slide. So voter suppression. I don't know if we have time. This is about a 2-minute video. Do we have time to?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay.
Black Voters Matter bus rolling into Louisville in Jefferson County, Georgia. Great day, an incredible gathering with some of the seniors at the center.
We had an amazing nonpartisan rally this morning.
We gotta have record numbers. We need y'all to get everybody in your family to the polls and send a message that we ain't going back, right? That you can't keep messing with our vote. And every time you mess with our vote, a little more mad we get. And every time we get mad, we got 5 more folks we coming with us.
We were going out so that the seniors could see the bus. And many of them wanted to ride the bus.
They were fired up, high energy, excited to go spread the word to their folks, excited to go vote, out here, literally out here dancing and having a party in front of the senior center, getting on the bus to go vote at the polling place. Everybody excited to go vote.
Someone had passed by and saw the seniors getting on the bus and called the county commissioner's office to tell them that we can't do that. Now, there's no law that says that Black folk can't ride on buses no more.
So the bad news is that they're gonna make us get off the bus right now, and that's okay, because y'all still gonna make it do what it do.
So they so mad and low down that we getting jealous. But they can't stop the rain. You can't stop it. Whatever God got plans is for us. And you can't stop us, can you? We still going down there to vote. That's right. Still going to vote.
And somebody called the commission, the county commission, to complain because they saw all these Black folks get on this big black bus. It's the blackest bus in America. Somebody drove past, saw that, got nervous, got mad, called the county commission's office, which then called the center. And the bottom line was all the folks who had just got on the bus, and the bus was full. This is a 50-passenger bus full of folk. had to come off the bus. You can look at this bus. There's not a candidate on this bus. There's not a party symbol on this bus. But I'm gonna tell you what is on this bus. A whole bunch of black fists in the air with the word power underneath. That's what scared them and made them say those folks have to come off that bus.
The irony around this is we were invited to come. We were invited by a woman who is a leader in this community who had already talked to the county commissioner, let them know that we were here, had already got a permission from the center that we were here. So none of that, what happened was a real issue. What it was an intimidation factor, right? But it ain't gonna stop us. Can't stop, won't stop. Can't stop, won't stop.
Can't stop, won't stop.
That's right. Can't stop, won't stop. So that's one of our slogans, and you saw it there on the side of the bus as well. So and I'm gonna take a moment just to talk a little bit about the voter suppression piece, because y'all, I mean, there's really no way to overestimate the importance of voter suppression in general, right? But in terms of like this particular election, right? And so we're seeing right now, we've already heard the ideas, the tweets about canceling the election, right? Which some people took as being like just one of the usual distraction tweets, right? But our position is that we have to really listen and watch, because what are we seeing happening? We're seeing the attacks on vote by mail, right? We saw when Trump first appointed his crony to be Postmaster General, we saw the writing on the wall. Some people thought that was a move that was about Amazon. And we said then, and I said then, I did articles and tweeted everything, this isn't about Amazon. This is about an election that is going to be largely a vote by mail election, and he's trying to control the very entity that will control the votes. And so, we're seeing those attacks. We're seeing the ideas about canceling an election. We're seeing, we're seeing beneath the surface a whole framework that his campaign and the Republican committee has built up to litigate. They've invested millions of dollars into their litigation budget because they are fighting in partnership with states. They are fighting to limit vote by mail. Just in Tennessee, just last week, there was another court decision by the Tennessee Supreme Court, which is restricting who can use early voting. We're involved in litigation in 2 states right now, Alabama and Georgia, that are about vote by mail and how vote by mail gets carried out and who has access to it. So just as an example, just quickly, in Alabama, they've said they've gotten away with the excuse requirement, but they're saying that they're not going to get rid of the other requirements that they have in the process, which includes that not only do you have to have a photo ID, right, and not only do you have to sign both two different envelopes, but you've got to have either 2 witnesses or a notary to notarize your signatures, right? And who really has access to a notary like that, and especially in the midst of a pandemic, and especially in the midst of a pandemic in Alabama, where they're seeing rapidly surging cases in the state because of their poor leadership there. And so you take all this, and one of the things that we're very clear about is it's one thing to have vote by mail, to be in a state where they're saying, okay, we're going to have some form of vote by mail, but it's another thing to have an actually effective and impactful vote by mail system that really provides access to voters, because there's all kinds of pitfalls and obstacles that can get in the way of vote by mail. Some people think that vote by mail means it's exempt from voter suppression, and what we're seeing is no, the same things that they'll try to do to suppress the vote in person, they'll do with vote by mail, right? And so we've been saying that we've got these phases, and one of my slides actually deals with it, where our first effort is going to be get as many people as possible to do vote by mail, and then we're going to go into the early vote phase, where we try to get as many people as possible to early vote, and then we've got phase 3, which is election day, which is whoever's left for whatever reason who has to go vote on election day. We're going to do everything we can to provide support to recruit younger poll workers so that there isn't a shortage of poll workers in our communities, to provide sanitizer, to provide masks. These are some of the things that we've already done in some of the elections that have taken place in Georgia, in Kentucky, where we were, and also in Michigan, which just had an election. And what we're seeing in all three of those cases, and other elections that have taken place, is that we're seeing massive turnout, right? And I'll talk about that more maybe in the question and answer session. But my point being that in terms of voter suppression, we are very, very concerned about the attacks on vote by mail. And, you know, the other day I was actually at a point when they released an article talking about how Trump was about to do executive orders and that his staff has been researching ways to sabotage vote by mail. Like each day I get closer to just telling people, you know what, forget the vote by mail thing. Let's just find a way to get to the polls and do it as safely as possible. But for some folks in our community, and particularly in some of our states, the risk of that is just really too high to just have, you know, millions and millions that are just showing up at the polling places. So, you know, right now our focus is how can we inform people about the suppression that takes place within vote by mail? How can we mitigate some of it to best we can? And how can we get as big a turnout with that and be as watchful and vigilant as possible to make sure that they're not using that process to steal votes. So real quick, you see the slide there about the support that we give our partners. I already talked a little bit about some of those forms of support that we give, but within the grant program, I just wanted to highlight that we have over 200 partner groups, and I think that number has actually been going up over the past couple of months, and we give many grant support to, usually anywhere from 1,000 to 5,000, and now we've actually increased it to 10,000. And so the last 2 years, we were able to give out $1 million each of the last 2 years. This year is likely to be triple that. In fact, no likely about it. I'd say at least triple, maybe even quadruple that amount. So because the need is so great, and not even just because it's a presidential election year, but because of all the other historic things that are going on that we've directed some unique support to, including our Saving Ourselves Fund that you see listed there, which is basically support that we've provided for community groups that are doing COVID-related mutual aid work. Because one of the things we realized is, and actually our partners in Milwaukee were probably the first to really experience this, we can't go about communicating with our voters as if this is just another election, as if it's not taking place in the midst of a health crisis when they've got all of that going on in their lives, but then they're getting a tweet or a phone call saying, hey, we need you to come out and vote. And so we created this fund and a range of other activities that were just about providing information and resources and support related to coronavirus, whether that's feeding kids that weren't in school, you know, shopping for senior citizens, testing support, providing PPE, masks, et cetera, sanitizer and cleaning support. And so we created a whole fund just to support that. And similarly, when there was the unrest, the police protests around the police violence, we created a fund just around providing support for folks that were involved in those protests, and we call it the Resistance Fund. So next slide, please. These are some other forms of the partner support that we provide. I'll send the slides around for folks that want to take a closer look. But as you all just mentioned, phone banking and texting and postcarding are some of the main ways that we have for volunteers to get involved in the process. And then I think last slide, this is the last thing I'll talk about. Relational organizing. Everything we do, we try to get, and this is one way that we get around some of the shortcomings in terms of the data in the van systems, right? Which is, we use that stuff, but also what we try to do is we try to turn everybody we touch into an organizer, right? Into their own individual van system. And so we always do something called the 5 Friends Pledge, where we try to get everybody we touch to contact at least 5 friends, 5 family members to spread the word, to share information about Election Day or about how to vote by mail, to get involved on social media. And we're really excited about a new partnership we have with Organizing Empowerment Project. Some of you may be familiar with the Empower app, but we're partnering with them to really kind of take our relational organizing program to the next stage. So I think I'm up on time now, so I'm gonna pause there maybe and just turn it over for questions and answers. But the bottom line is this: we know how important this election is. We know that the role that Black voters get to play. We know, and not even just at the presidential level, but even, you know, the roads to power of the Senate really rise through the South. Whether you're talking about Alabama and Doug Jones, South Carolina, even Kentucky, right? Mississippi, right? And so, and quietly, even in Tennessee, where a Black woman just won the primary there for the Senate race. So we're really excited about this election season. Really excited about the partners that we're building up with, and really excited to have partners like you all providing the support that you all do.
Thank you, Cliff. As you, I don't know if you heard, we are supporting Dreama Caldwell. She's running, a Black woman running for county commissioner in Alamance County, North Carolina. So that's exactly what you're talking about. And that's why we're really excited for her race. She's an incredible woman. And that's where we need, like, you know, people of color, women in the local positions. So key for everyone in the South and everywhere. So we have some questions for you. What about Doug Jones? Are you guys getting involved with his election again, or?
Yep, definitely. Yeah, no, we're definitely involved with that election. You know, we're actually, I was talking with a couple of our team managers the other day. I'm actually kind of optimistic, which seems crazy because there was a poll done the other day that showed him back by like double digits, I think. But, you know, there were polls showing he was behind by double digits back, you know, the first time that he ran. And so, you know, and one of the things that I think increases the chances there is that, unlike when he first ran, where really nobody knew him and all he had to go on was he was the prosecutor that had prosecuted the bombers and the church bombing of the 4 little girls. And not at the time, obviously, in 1963, but much later on, right, when they reopened the cold case. And so that was his main selling point. Here we are now, a couple of years later, and he actually has a track record he can speak to. Not perfect on every vote, right? But the truth is, when he went in, we knew that, right? We sent him an open letter where we said, look, these are the minimum things that we expect out of you. We know that you're a Democratic senator in the state of Alabama, right? So you can't be a member of the squad, right? We get that, right? But, you know, but there were some minimum things like holding the line on healthcare, holding the line on taxes, you know, expanding voting rights, right? That there was a set of things that we expected, and he's delivered. And plus some other things like on HBCU funding, and, you know, in a vote that, you know, some people really look at as the profile and courage, his vote on impeachment, which at the time people said that's the kiss of death, but he stood his ground. And so there's a track record on issues that I think will allow us to engage people in a different kind of way, even more so than we were able to do 3 years ago.
And another really good question here: how do you identify your local partners, and how do you decide who to help?
That's a great question. You know, so there's 3 or 4 criteria we look at. Part of it starts just with geography and demographics. You know, so that when we look within a state, we're looking at particular counties, we're looking at a certain demographic mix where we've got enough power, enough numbers so that we can really express our power, right? But in terms of the actual partners, we're looking at, you know, who it is that we've had relationships with. Latasha and I have been working in the South for, you know, 20 years now, over 20 years. And so we've got deep relationships, even in states that were new states for us, or even in counties that were new counties for us. We always had a way of reaching out to somebody to say, who, you know, in this county, who do we need to be talking to? Who's doing good work? And so when we started doing this a couple of years ago, a lot of it was that. Some of it was just driving around, even before the bus, right? Even before the bus tours, it was just driving around I'm sorry, I was just looking at one of the comments coming across. We were driving around just in a little rental car, just me and Latasha, before we had a staff, before we had a bus, and we'd just go and meet with people and sit down and have a community meeting. And just, you know, we call it a learning tours, and just listening and seeing and feeling for ourselves, because sometimes you don't really know, you don't know who's doing what until you're really just there and you're present. Right, we could do research on you know, Facebook and online one of the things I always like to do is I love to look at like local media to see who is it that the local newspaper is dogging out as being too, too Black or too radical, right? Who acted up at the last city council meeting and they're talking bad about them. And when I find that article and I find that person or that group, that's who I want to get with. That's exactly who we want to connect with, because we know that if the local power structure has seen fit to target them as being problematic, then that's exactly who we want to be in relationship with. So there's lots of ways between personal referrals and doing our research that we find out, who's doing what and who's legit. And then it's a relationship building process.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it takes time, but okay, another question here. We probably have time for one more question. And this is something I'm also interested in. Can you comment on the polls showing Biden and the Dems leading? How are you getting people to come out and vote for Biden, and the effects of voter suppression, the effects of the quarantine and not being able to canvass?
Yeah, so a couple of questions built into that. One, in terms of the polling, I always say, look, I don't really care what the polls are saying, right? Because and I said this even in 2016. I promise you, it's not just hindsight. Any poll that hit anything less than like an 8-point gap, I said that's a losing poll, right? Because you got to take a couple of things into account. One of them is, and depending on the state, one of them, white voters will lie, right? They will lie in polls, call it the Bradley effect, call it whatever you want to call it. But there's an element, and still to this day, there's an element of folks that are going to vote for Trump, but they don't want to tell you that they're going to vote for Trump. And so I always figured that's at least 3 or 4% right there that you just got to discount in some of these polling gaps. And then you got to take into account voter suppression, that at the end of the day, the polls aren't going to be what decides the election. Who's actually able to use their vote and cast their vote is going to be what's decided. And a lot of these polls don't really take that into account sufficiently enough. And then you're winding up with a gap. If you really look at, like, if you look at Michigan, even from 2016, the polls weren't that far off, right? Take into account the Bradley effect or the Trump effect, whatever you want to call it. And then also take into account the voter suppression. There were enough votes that were not counted, that were wasted, that were thrown away in Michigan, that literally could have changed the outcome of that election. But because the polls didn't account for that, it looked like, oh, the polls are so wrong, but they just, they didn't take the right things into account. And so, so I'm not comfortable with anything that's under like a 8-point. I might even go as high as now with the vote by mail issues. I'd even go as high as anything under 10% lead is not on steady ground. And then the second part of that question, I think, was about the canvassing in the midst of coronavirus.
Yeah, and also, do you have a relationship with Reclaim Our Vote? Because we have a relationship with them. We do postcarding through Reclaim Our Vote. So.
Andrea Miller.
Andrea Miller, yeah.
Yes, dude, we have a relationship. So we actually learned of each other after Alabama, because she was doing what she does, postcarding, and especially phone banking. So yes, we have a great relationship with Andrea, Reclaim Our Vote, and we're going to be working closely together this cycle as well. But yeah, we've been doing stuff with them, like especially with Andrea and her other organizations for the past 3 years.
Great. Okay, we're going to move to great timing, Cliff. You talked just fast enough.
Perfect. Great.
We're going to move to the we didn't get to that one, but we all know all this, and we're going to get to this part. Renee, why don't you take over to talk about how we can help Cliff and Latasha and Black voters in America.
Well, thanks, Cliff. That was I think, very inspiring, very on target discussion. And probably a lot of people on this call have seen the article about how you've been recognized by the Soros Fund and that you are going to be receiving a lot of support, and that is wonderful. But when Cliff and I spoke, he informed me that it's not going to come in it won't start coming in until next year.
Right.
And so to everyone on this call, all the Airlift donors, all the MVCAM members, I'm asking you to really think hard and think generous and support the work that Black Voters Matter is doing. And we need to support them every way we can. And yes, hopefully we're phone banking and postcarding into the states that they're working with. But I think we all know that financial resources really fuel so much of the work that's being done out there.